these notes later on down the judicial process. And as a result of that, it could cause, malpractice within the justice system. And it become a money making. At the same time, they used foster caring as a business. It became a business. They were allowing social workers to become foster carers, which I feel as a public servant, we were not allowed to have any other licensed jobs. As a police officer, I could not become a licensed taxi driver, a licensed publican. I could not do that. Anything that needed a license from the local authority, I could not do that because of corruption. Yet social workers were allowed to become foster carers. They were also allowed to set up fostering agencies. You could buy a kids' home and you could then set yourself up and you could have 5 children in there, for example. That was the average. And you'll feel that quickly. You could be making £10,000 a week. I'm going to give you an example. When I looked into the vice problem, and my narrative's out there, you can see my narrative, and it also went on to become written evidence in the government inquiry. When I looked at the children's homes in the borough of Haringey, which had a disproportionate amount, 23 homes for a small authority, each single one had 5 kids. And when I approached them, on average, out of them 5 children, 3 of them were working as child prostitutes from Thursday through to Monday, and not at any point did social services, the police missing persons, the vice unit or the child protection services step in to help. So in summary of this, it is a failed system. The thing to do is keep the wolf from your door, protect your children, love your children, make sure they're catered for emotionally, educationally, physically and spiritually. Because once the police start coming into it, it is a money-making entity, and there is a legal presumption that any child coming from the third world is coming from poverty and corruption and abuse. So there is this underlying presumption. So as a West African community, you really are struggling against it. So keep your family tight, protect them and love them, and hopefully the
workers all over the world, but especially those working with and in children's services. Let me just give you some, just so you're aware, this meeting is being recorded, I just wanted to make that clear at the very outset, and I'll repeat that again at the end. Okay, so just to give you some background information regarding our association. So our association was constituted in January of this year, and we have an executive committee. In the same month, i.e. January, we also applied for membership of CANOC, which stands for the Central Association of Nigerians in the UK. And I believe that their president, Mr. Ayo Akinfe, is either with us now or will be joining us. So I'd like to thank him personally for his support. CANOC is, as you may or may not be aware, affiliated to the Nigerian High Commission. Let me move on. Today, we come together to highlight one of the most pressing issues affecting the Nigerian community, namely Japa migration and how to safeguard our children. When our association was constituted, it was done so out of a need to empower, support and educate our community. Our aim is to work collaboratively with others, and in so doing, open up a real and meaningful dialogue. We know the issues that we are going to discuss and will be discussing today are very emotive. Moving forward, it is our intention to talk on such topics as domestic violence, child abuse, and mental health. But before we begin, I just need to go back and remind our audience of some housekeeping rules. Number one, I would ask that everyone other than those speaking put their microphones on mute. Number two, I would ask again that we respect confidentiality. And by that, I mean, do not disclose the identities of third parties. Names should always be anonymized. And I repeat again that this session is being recorded. Just so we know who's actually present today, with your permission, I'd ask you just to put your name and, if applicable, your association, your organisation in the comments box. We'll also going to put in the comments box details of how you can actually join our association. The association is open to all Nigerians living in the UK, provided that you work in either health and or social care. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Tolu. Tolu is a senior social worker. She's also our association's secretary, and she will be facilitating this event. Over to you, Tolu. Tolu?
Good evening, everyone. Please, can you just wave if you can hear me? Because I'm not sure if you can hear me. Thank you. Hi, good evening. And just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening. We really, really appreciate this, because if we set up a meeting and there's no one to actually share the day with, it's meaningless. So thank you. Mr. Odedeyi, I don't know if you are on, if you can take over admitting people into the Zoom meeting, I will really appreciate that. So please pardon me, I'm still trying to work my way around Zoom, just in case, you see me pressing the button. It's like I'm trying to admit people into the meeting as well.
You need to make me co-host, ma. You are the host. Make me co-host, please.
Okay, I should make you the co-host. Thank you.
Yes, ma.
All
So
right.
I can also assist in that regard as well, Tolu.
Okay, so can I make two people
Yes,
at the same time?
As many as possible, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Let me just go ahead and do that. Just bear with me 1 second. Let me go ahead and do that. So Linda, I can see you on the screen. You disappeared again.
Sister Linda is already co-host. If you can just make me.
Okay, so Odedeyi. I'm trying to locate you here.
Save the woman.
Oh, save the woman. Okay, save the woman. All right, found you. Make co-host, right?
Yes, please.
All right, okay. Sorry about that little hitch over there. So thank you once again for joining us. First and foremost, happy World Social Work Day to all the social workers in the house. We just want to let you all know that we appreciate you for all the hard work you are doing for the community, for families, for children, helping them to, achieve positive outcomes. So we celebrate you today. The World Social Work Day is a day set aside all over the world to celebrate social workers and to, show appreciation for this challenging but rewarding profession. This year's theme is Bien Viva, Shared Future for Transformative Change. And for the Nigerian community, what does this mean? Well, Bien Vivien means harmonious living, and the Nigerian Association of Healthcare Workers and Social Care Workers UK, we want to use this event to kickstart the conversation on how we can learn, how we can connect and influence change within the children's services by improving the services within the children's services and the Nigerian community. We're also, looking at how we can work with the British and the Nigerian government to come up with policies that will impact our community in a positive way. And also, help improve the outcome of lives for Nigerian families living in the United Kingdom. I believe in 2012, it was alleged that there was an overrepresentation of Nigerian children in the care system due to various reasons. And I think mostly around cultural and religious practices, as well as, issues around abuse and neglect. Since then, My understanding is that the High Commission invited our community for us to dialogue and look for ways to improve this situation. However, I'm not sure how that panned out or what the outcome of that meeting was. Again, we are seeing an influx of our children in the care system. And I believe due to the JAPA migration, following the certificate of sponsorship for Nigerians as well as other countries, coming into the UK for work or as students. And there is a huge concern here. I believe my colleagues and myself were doing a great job in ensuring that, families are held together, well supported. However, from what we are seeing, I think there's a level of concern, and I think is imminent for us to begin to think about various early intervention that we can come up with that will help our community and families, so that we can actually be able to impact the UK, the United Kingdom as a country in a better way. So we have lined up a couple of presenters for today from different professions, those working with families directly, as well as social workers from the solicitors working with families as well. So our first speaker today is Mr. Olalekan Odedeyi. Olalekan Odedeyi is our first speaker for today. He is a community advocate and a social entrepreneur with an MSc in supply chain management. He has volunteered in various roles over the past few years, such as Hate Crime Scrutiny Panel for the Crown Prosecution Service in the Northeast. He's a member of the Stop and Search BAME Security Panel for Cleveland Police, as well as being a parent himself. He's the founder of the organization called Save the Woman, and they have supported several families in the United Kingdom. He's currently the vice chair of the Unite community in Teesside and Durham area. So I just want you to join me to welcome Mr. Olalekan Odedeyi.
Thank you very much, man. Have you got the video on, please? If you've got the video, could you just help us play that just 3-minute video before I start?
All right. So I'm just going to share my screen. Please, if you can see my screen, please do let me know. Is that visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm playing that now.
Conversation when it's come to children social care, but we have to say it. Currently, over 80,000 children are in the care system, while there's a research that says by 2025, it will be about 100,000 plus. That's a huge number. About question for gender equality, women empowerment, and when I see somebody that's having kind of bitterness in their heart, I identify such person. Social entrepreneur, and I have a master in supply chain management. I provide advocacy support to the community, and I'm also the founder of Save the Woman. Back in 2019, she has not been able to see her daughter. Her daughter has been taken to rescue care. See bitterness in her face, but she could not speak out. She don't know who to speak to. Then I might join. Just woke up midnight. Left, right, you can't find your child. I listened to her carefully. I approached the community to seek. Try to culture. So it's not about entry community, cherish and not simple. We have to be careful to look into some of the process.
It seems you have moved yourself, Madam Tolu. Probably we will share the video later, the link, the YouTube later. If you could
Oh,
stop that.
okay.
We recently launched Africentric Parenting Skills, and that course
All
is
right.
about
So should I stop the video for now?
Yeah, you can stop the video. Since it's not clear at the moment, we can share the
Okay.
what's it
All
called?
right. Okay. All right.
safeguarding and about enlightening parents, educating them, equipping them with skills.
All right,
Good
Mr.
evening,
Holland,
everyone.
okay, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction. Once again, I say good evening to everyone. As mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Save the Woman. Basically, what we do, we provide advocacy, training, support to families. In 2019, as you must have seen in the video, probably we'll share the link on YouTube later. We value children. We understand it is necessary that we protect every child to safeguard them and to promote their well-being. And this is not just limited to UK government alone, it's a global concern. And to God as well, God says, and you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep? This was the situation in 2019 when the single mom reached out to us that our children have been taken into care. We let her understand there's a disclosure in school, and from the school, they have to make a referral to the local authority, and it is within the local authority responsibility to protect the well-being and welfare of that child if they deem is likely exposed to harm or is already having harm already. However, Article 9 of the United Nations Convention says separation from parents, children must not be separated from their parents against their will unless it is in their best interest. For example, if a parent is hurting or neglecting child. And from research, we realize over 63% of referral or child protection issue has to due to child abuse or neglect. From local area where we based in Middlesbrough, we seek for data, and from the member of parliament, the data we got from the council shows African children in Middlesbrough are 6% in care, whereas the children of school age are 2%. That is a big margin. And that was also backed up by the research that it is 4 times more likely to take African children into care compared to white British, and 3 times more likely compared to other ethnic minority. This is a matter of concern locally, and we say, what can we do? We don't want to complain. As Shirley Chisholm said, you don't make progress by standing on the sideline, whimpering, complaining. You make progress by implementing idea. That's made us to have our first grassroots community discussion around children's social care in Teesside. That was when we realized it's not just limited to Middlesbrough alone. It is a national issue. In fact, we organized a program and it was from Sweden, and they were also of same concern. And with my connection with other roles, I sat on Crown Protection Service, policing, school governor, and I also represent family in court as Mikesi friend. This gives us a kind of connection to work around this area of concern. And in the last couple of years, we've done little we can do, and our work has been recognized at the national level. In 2023, we won the Outstanding Contribution to Social Care and other many awards as well. What do? We provide advocacy, and recently in 2020, we launched a program called Africentric Parenting Program. And that program has been one of the tools that we use to support parents by making sure the courts understand what they have been able to acquire and what they have been able to learn, and at this best time to be able to rehabilitate, unify those children back to their family. By God's grace, we have handled about 185 cases, out of which 65 children have been safely returned back to their family. We protected 107 children entering care system. How did we do this? If a family reaches out to us on time, we will be able to reach out to the local authority, to the professional involved, and hear from them, because many families will tell us what they want us to hear. But until we reach out to the local authority, they tell us their own side, and we seek for support and see how can we support, what can we do. Unfortunately, there's over-reporting of Black children and under-reporting of white children as suspected as abuse, especially when there's an accident at home and parents rush to the hospital, they call 999, they get to the hospital to seek for support. And because medical experts, it is their duty to raise a safeguarding concern if it's necessary and if it's called for that. Raising a safeguarding concern shouldn't be a problem. Referring or making a referral to the local authorities shouldn't be a problem, because this is the duty of everyone, especially when there's an agreement of every working together agreement. So be it school, be it hospital, be it in neighborhood, when there's a concern of safeguarding, they have to make a report. But the concern is, what method or what training does social care or social worker have for them to be able to assess those referrals? Because we've seen many cases that are malicious referral, and it's a matter of concern to us. In 2018, 2019, it was reported that only 13% of people who were looked after continuously for 12 months or more enter higher education, compared to 43% of all pupils. People who have spent time in local authority care face many significant concerns and challenges in entering higher education. In fact, recently, the Education Committee, they confirmed that an alarming number of foster parents are made for financial reasons rather than the best interest of children in care. Education Committee also report that foster care is all about the money. Foster care adversely affects children. That was a research. Children in care, 52% more likely to be hospitalized than those who have no contact with care system. Children in care more likely to die earlier than those left with their best parents. If these are the outcome of children being in care, everybody must do their possible best to ensure taking children into care should and must be a last resort. Being in care is bad enough, but being Black and in care is twice as bad. Being Black and brought up white, I don't fit into Black or white society. That's what a child in care says. Now, question to the stakeholders. On the 27th February 2024, Parliamentary Committee held first session for new children's social care inquiry. It was revealed that the Local Government Association reported that spend on early intervention services has fallen by 46% since 2010-2011, with funds diverted to child protection and in care services. If you look at the previous slide, it tells you the implication of child in care, the outcome. Nobody ever pray for that. So why would money that's supposed to be used on early intervention support falling by 46% and diverted to child protection and in care? Well, why was this and to whose benefit? Evidence from Barnardo's, which is among the organizations giving evidence to the committee, says the number of children in residential care has increased by 79% since 2010-2011. Why was this and to whose benefit? You must have seen a report that a care home makes £300 million profit, even during COVID. That shows it's not for the benefit of the child or children taken into care. The most recent data on look after children, including adoption, shows a 27.5 increase since 2010. Now, children in care are 83,840. And there's a research that says by 2025, it will be 100,000 children in care. I'm sure none of us here will ever pray that that number should include our children or our family. So, were the children just taken into care when it is not necessary? There's a report locally here that child protection was escalated when it is not needed. Now, on this platform today, we have started a campaign and we are seeking your support, and we are asking you today, if you can answer us, will you support our campaign for the councils or local authority in UK and support an independent review led by Black professionals regarding the overrepresentation of Black children and African Caribbean children in the care system and the racial barriers which deter Black families putting themselves forward to foster or adopt. If necessary, if at all there's need for a child to go into care, we need to make sure people that want to foster get that support. Most of the cases is child abuse or neglect, and in the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's about daddy will beat me, mommy will beat me. That is what we understand. That is what we had. But there are other areas that people are not focusing on. For instance, a child was noticed that he had they call 999 and get to the hospital. But getting to the hospital make a referral. But what the social worker did when they attended, the mom said, I have been put under supervision by social worker with claims that the incident might have happened before I left in the morning for my driving test or previous. And they believe the results should have estimated time of incident. So when parents give their own side of story of how incident happened at home, at that moment, they need empathy, they need support, they need comfort, but that is not situation. Situation is assuming they are abusers. And there's a report, chief social worker for England, for children and family in England says, many children, babies are wrongly taken into care. They are fond of investigating families rather than supporting family. This is another family. When a child fell down and they rushed the child to the hospital, they discovered fracture on the skull, but didn't provide them with details. They told me they have a duty to report, and I obliged them to report. They stated a possibility of abuse, especially because we had no explanation of how the fracture happened. Many families are scared of asking for support. There is a child that fell on the staircase. If a child fell on the staircase, there are many things they can provide that said, how do you mitigate this so that this future incident will not reoccur? But at that moment, parents don't get that support. They stated a possibility of abuse, especially when they have no explanation for that. So we try as much as possible to do this by saying that, okay, people have migrated here. Before they get to know or they understand the system, they have immigration issues, they have
Mr. sorry that I'm butting in. Because of time, I would like you to just round up in 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So, like I was saying, if you want to know more about what we do and how we're able to support family, the secret is about this course that we're talking about, Africentric Parenting Skills program. And we have got referral from the court, we have got referral from many local authorities, and we are happy to continue supporting professionals. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just very quickly interject? Perhaps you can ask him to put the details in the chat.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Dede. So please do include your details in the chat, just like Linda suggested, because I know there will be families here or someone will know someone that needs your support moving forward. Again, we are here to brainstorm together. We're not here to pull down the children's services, because the children's services hold a very, very important role in this society, in this country, and we do appreciate when they get it right. I'm part of the institution, and I know how much work we put into our support and system to get things right. However, are there areas of further development? Absolutely. And I think that is one of the things you have spoken into today in terms of early intervention. Early intervention will help us to mitigate a lot of issues that we are beginning to experience. So thank you so much for your comment, and your information is well received, and we appreciate you. Our next speaker is Rosetta Etemewe. Rosetta, I am sorry if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly. So Rosetta is a qualified social worker. She graduated from the University of East Anglia, and in the last 23 years, she has devoted her service to social work, where she has achieved positive outcomes for children and families. She's worked with Children and Family Court Advisory Support Service as an advanced practitioner, and that is CAFCAS. CAFCAS speaks in the best interest of children in general. Rosetta is currently an independent social worker working with various local authorities in the London area. So please join me to welcome Rosetta.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Good evening.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I've just been introduced, so I'm going to go straight into the topic today. I've only got 20 minutes, so hopefully I can cover the areas. What I want to talk about today is actually child protection. I want to ask the moderator, do we have a slide at all? Please. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll just...
Not everyone can see the slide. Please, you can just give a thumbs up if you can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can everybody see the slide? Okay, what I want to start with this evening is just to talk about the myth. I think if I start from that angle, people would understand me better. There is this myth that social workers are just there to take children, to remove children from their families. And I don't think that is actually the case. I think sometimes when our family is actually working with social workers, somewhere along the line, there could be some relationship issues in between. And sometimes I think it's how we actually convey the message to the families that we are working with. That in a way actually determines the outcome. So I just want to put it out clear there that no social worker would actually wake up from their house and say, today I am removing this child. No. We are actually guided by the Children Act. We have a social work values. We can't just go there and remove children. So I think I needed to talk about that, to just clear the air. However, we actually work under our legal framework under which we work is the Children Act 1989 and the Children Act 2004. It is that act that is like our Bible. That is what we use when we undertake our work. So the Children Act 1989, social workers on this platform would be familiar, but I'm also aware that there are other families here, for example, families that we might be working with and the new families in town, which would be the Jakba families. So they wouldn't have any clue about what I am talking about. So I'm going to explain that So under the Children Act 1989, it's very clear. It says to us that the child is paramount, that any decisions we make about the child, it is about the child. It doesn't say we do not recognize the parents, but it says the child is our focus. And for us to get the outcomes that we want for the child, we would work with the entire family. So that's how we do our work. And then in 2004, there was the safeguarding issue actually came up in 2004, and this was following the death of Victoria Klimby. So there was more emphasis on the fact that we need to do more. Everybody should be responsible for every child. So your neighbor next door, the ordinary person walking on the street, if you hear a child screaming, if it's your next door neighbor, you don't even have to know them. Safeguarding, Lord Leming said, safeguarding should be everybody's business. So we've actually worked from that aspect, and so we've kind of moved on. So what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about to distinguish between Section 17. Moderator, can you please move this upwards? I think I'm done with the myth about social work. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, so up a little bit. Yes, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I want to talk about, I just want to break down the thresholds, because not everybody actually understands what Section 17 is and what Section 47 is. So from the layman point of view, Section 17 is a lower category. Any child that actually comes to, so I'll define what a child in need is, because that's what comes under Section 17. So a child in need is a child who is unlikely to achieve a reasonable help and development without support services from the government. So that's under Section 7. So your child with disability will come under that. A child who's actually caring for parents will come under that category. A child that is blind, a child that is hard of hearing, a child that is out there on the streets and we cannot identify who the parent is, so they become ward of court, is your child in need. So the category is, the list is just huge, is endless. So under Section 17 is provision of services. A family comes to our attention, it could be a referral, anybody refers a family in, we take it in, we do our assessment, we decide what sort of services they need. It's a lesser category, and with Section 17, you actually have a duty to say you're going to work with us. With Section 17, the power is actually with the family to say, yes, we want to work with you. You've come up with a plan, social worker, we actually want to work with you. If they don't want to work with us, we close the case. They have an upper hand than us, the social workers. Section 47 is a different criteria altogether. When we undertake Section 47, it means the child is at risk of harm or the child has actually suffered harm. So we go through a process, and that's where child protection actually comes into it, because the families, most of the families we work with don't actually understand our thresholds and how we come to those categorizations. So that is what I am actually going to break down now. So we now look at categories of abuse. We have physical, we have emotional, we have neglect. And what's the fourth one now? So we have emotional, we have physical, we have neglect.
Psychological.
Sorry?
Sexual.
Psychological.
And sexual.
And sexual.
Yes, and sexual. So those are the four categories. Not sure if you want me to explain that, we have enough time for that. So sexual abuse, that is, a child can actually make a disclosure that they've been actually sexually abused, either by an adult. Sometimes they're familiar people, sometimes they're parents, sometimes they're just people that they don't know. And when those things happen, we expect our parents to take the right course of action. Some of them do, some don't. Some, they know the abusers and they decide to conceal. And so everything can actually grow out of proportion, and then we are in court. In other cases, emotional abuse sometimes is the way we actually convey messages to our children. I think as African families, kisses and hugs is actually not us. So I don't judge families by that, because I can tell that parents actually love their children without them kissing and actually hugging them, you know. So that is not just the yardstick, it's the other things that the parents actually do that actually gives us concern that they actually don't understand the children, or they're not actually conveying that warmth to their children. For the young ones, they don't want that anyway. They're very embarrassed if you want to hug and kiss them anyway. But there are other ways of actually showing emotion, showing interest. My child, you came back from school today. How was your day? How has it been? Spend time with them, talk to them, when we have children who say actually they are hungry, they haven't been fed and things like that, or they come into school, they actually come into school, the teacher says they don't feel like they don't think this child has actually had a wash for the last 4 weeks or so. They've been watching the child, they come in with dirty nails, a little bit whiffy and things like that, and we have those kind of referrals. And sometimes those referrals, when they actually come to our attention, some of them can actually be dealt with by the professionals that we work with. For example, school, we work with school very closely and helps. A referral comes in, and sometimes I say, speak to the parents. Have you actually spoken to them? Oh, no, they're going to shout at me. Oh, they're always, raising their voice and things like that. Yes, some of our families are actually like that because number one, sometimes they don't even understand what you're talking about. And number two, they're probably putting a wall of defense because they know that something is going to come out of that. So we need to learn how to actually manage those issues that are actually coming up. The other one is actually physical abuse. Nigerians, we need to wake up. In my practice, I've seen children where their parents have actually designed their back with belts and cane. That is a no-no. So when you have situations like this, how do you expect a social worker to actually come and sit down in your house and say, well done, or actually say, no, we're actually going to leave this child in your care? No. And one other thing is that when people actually think we take their children and just place them in care, we don't actually do that. We have a duty to actually look at who is going to look after this child within the family, because we believe children are best raised in their families. So we would actually reach out to family members and say, we are investigating. For the time being, we don't want to take this child into care, but we want to know, can you have this child for a period of time? Can you have this child for us to complete the work that we need to do? Now, some families will say yes. Other families would say no, because they say this particular family is going to make our life hell. So you might as well take the child into care. And we actually don't just take children into care because we have to fulfill our duty. We have to convince the court that we have enough ground, and that's where thresholds actually come in. You cannot remove a child without providing the evidence and all of that. And I'm not saying things don't actually happen, because every case is actually different. So I don't want to pinpoint, because even we as social workers, there is actually poor practice in us as professionals, not just social worker. I think in any profession, there is always one or two persons who will actually not do what they need to do. So yes, there is actually poor practice, which we need to improve upon. We need to reflect on what we have done. In the course of my work, I've actually seen some families where I would actually say more could have been done. But when I actually inherited those cases, it was far gone. What do you do? And for the parents, you've ruined their lives. For the child, you've actually ruined it. Can you now go back and say, I got it wrong? Because if you go back and say you got it wrong, that's a big ho-ha. So I think as social workers, we need to find that room to also reflect on our practice, because sometimes our personal values actually override our professional values. And when we're doing our thresholds, we need to be very clear in terms of how we're measuring thresholds, because if you table a case and you ask 3 social workers to actually look at it, they'll come with 3 different thresholds. One will say, I think it's a number 5. Another one will say 3. Another person will say it's 7. But you've got to back it up. If you have your threshold, you have to give your reasons as to why that is your threshold. And I just want to say also on this platform that, for those families who are, hopefully they're going to learn from this, that when we actually take children to conference, it is not solely our decision that the child actually goes on the plan, because there is a child protection chair. All the professionals actually have to say if the child should be on a plan, or if a child protection plan, or whether they should be on a child in needs plan. and it is the chair that will make the final decision. So you might actually think, oh, a child needs to go on the plan, and then the chair will look at it and say, look, they've made progress in certain areas, and so I think it's child in need. You might actually say, I don't agree as a social worker, but you can dissent and they'll just note it down. So I just want people on this platform who actually don't understand the work that we do, that is not totally the decision of the social worker to place children on the plan. However, for the work that we do in terms of going to court and all of that, we have to gather the evidence, and we don't just gather it on our own. We speak to professionals, we speak to health, we speak to education, we speak to all professionals involved with the family to get a clear picture of what is happening. And we also look at the background history. We are always collating information because we have to put it before the court. And if you don't get it right, the court, they will wash you down. I've been in court where a judge would actually pull a social worker down. You wouldn't have anywhere to hide your face. So you have to do a good job. Moving on, can I have the slide up, please?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, too far. You're too far gone. I hope I'm still within time. Okay? Yes. All no, right. Down a bit. Down a bit.
Okay.
Down. No.
You going back up?
Yeah. How can we safeguard our children? Yes. So the ways that we can actually safeguard our children is we need to demonstrate a level of curiosity when working with children. We professionals and our counterparts actually need to do that as well. And that's school, health, the different agencies, camps, we have different agencies working with us. And also, gone are the days when we actually just interview parents and don't interview children, because the voice of the child is very important. I don't want to keep referring to Victoria Klimbia, but that was one big one in the UK, and it's in 2024. That's how many years ago when this child actually died. That level of communication, if he was actually there, maybe we could have actually saved Victoria. It's just like when you look at babies, they can't speak, but they communicate with their eyes. You can see when they're happy and you can tell when they are sad. When Victoria was in hospital, different professionals went to see her. They thought she had scabies. She didn't have scabies. It was the burn. But if anybody actually took it upon themselves to actually engage her, because the notes also said that whenever the auntie came to the hospital to see her, that her abdominal changed. That is her facial expression and the body language, but nobody actually picked it up. So when we say talking to children, we need to get their voices. No matter how little they are, even those who are hard of hearing, we have activities that we can do with them, words and pictures. We have board games. We have, just a variety of things that we can use to get information out of children. So let's listen to them when they hear. Do not dispel what they say, because when children are trying to communicate and something is happening and you don't listen to them or you dispel it, they will just stop. They wouldn't communicate. And that's how abuse starts, because they found an adult that they thought they could speak to, and then you now shut them down. They're not going to talk, and even within the so-called family that we actually call family, some actually know what is going on and they will tell the child not to speak. So it is a difficult one. And also, if we detect things at an early stage, we can actually make the changes. Early intervention is very important, is key to the work that we do. If we want good outcomes, sustainable outcomes, we need to get in there not when things are really, really terrible. When we start seeing the signs, that's when we need to go out there. But we can't just be, we need to see signs. We can't, nothing happens in a vacuum. We have to see signs to say, yes, this is what is happening, and we go in there and do the work. So that's it for the children. For the parents, what I actually see, or from what I've deduced from the work that I've actually done with families, is that this cultural rearing practice is different from all parts of the world, not just Nigeria. Africa is a continent. We're similar in the rearing practices, but for every, I think for every African child, it's just different in the households. But I know this physical abuse seems to be something common actually among us African families anyway. And I don't know how we're going to eradicate it, but we need to be making a difference, you know. When I'm working in the UK, I don't like to say we don't abuse our children. Physical chastisement is not allowed in the UK. I say, let's change the narrative. You know, if you visit your families in Nigeria, or for the Nigerian families here, let's practice it here. Why do we have to flog our children? Why can't we look at things like taking privileges away from them? Pocket money, if you're giving your little boy £5 a week, your 12-year-old, and he's misbehaving, cut it down to £2 a week and actually tell him first. You will see his reaction. He will say, mommy, no, because he's planned that £5 for something, you know, so they will change. Take their mobile phone, prevent them from watching, a cultural program, even their gadgets that they have in their room. If you take one, you would see how they will change completely, you know, but this belt and this cane, these implements, we need to put it aside, you know, because we are known for that, and it's not a good thing. And also what I know is that for some of our parents, it's where we're coming from. We don't know any different. If you were not raised in that way, it's very difficult for you to cultivate this habit of how children are being raised in this country, you know, because it's not all about implements. You can actually do it different, but some don't know any different. And so we're talking about cultural norms, what is acceptable and what is acceptable in our community or in our country, and what is not acceptable in the UK. And I don't want to look at it as something that is whether it's not acceptable or not acceptable. You look at it yourself, think about it. It is not good. Physical chastisement, it is not good. We need to change the narrative. That's where I'm on that subject, actually. And then looking at education and signposting. Some parents, they don't know where to get this information from. This is where our communities actually come into practice. Speak to your church leader, speak to your pastor. If you're struggling, reach out to family members. Back home in Nigeria is the community that actually raises the child. Nobody is going to say to you, don't speak to my child like that. That is the sort of things we actually hear here. Your neighbor would say, how dare you speak to my child like that? But in Africa, it's not so. But we can't bring Africa into the UK. So we have to use the little community that we actually have here. Don't stay in isolation. Come out, speak to people. And I know for some families, they'll actually say, well, if you go out and tell them they're going to take your child from you. No, it is not true. We don't want your children. Instead, we will give you the resources that you actually need. We just need openness and honesty. Tell us what is going on so we can help you. And then utilizing, yes, I've talked about family and friends network that you can use. The other factors that I think about is lack of awareness of available services, near recourse to public funds. If you don't have access to public funds, for example, the Japa families that we have, what I've actually been hearing about those families, you know, I would think some of them actually come under the category of child in need. Because if you don't have a job, how are you going to put food on the table? How are you going to feed your children? That in itself is neglect, but we need to look at the circumstances. You know, you can't just go to the parents and say, well, you came into this country 6 months ago. Why aren't you working? Well, you can see they came into the country, they came to work, they sold their belongings, they came to start their life here, and they don't have any jobs. That's just an example, a good example I can use right now, because those families actually are not doing great. They're not doing well because they were deceived. They were promised things that weren't on ground, and they came here. And as I say, Nigerian people, they're very hardworking people. Give them anything, they'll make something out of it. Those families sold their homes, borrowed money, they came here. So those families are child in need. But does it mean that they're going to take your children into care? No, no. Instead, we as social workers, if you come to our attention, we would look at the support services that is available to help you. We have food banks. We have, I know about the Yorkshire community. the manager there is doing a great job, in terms of Japa. He's putting out a lot of information out there. He goes from Marks and Spencer. He has volunteers working with him. Goes to Marks and Spencer. He goes to Iceland. He collects food from different shops, that are just giving food for these families. But we need to do more. We need to do more for our community. We need to do more for our society. We need culturally specific, programs for our families. It's not a one size fits all. It is not. We are actually different. So we need something that is synonymous to actually make those changes. That's what I feel should be done for, our families. And hopefully something good is going to come out of it. I don't know if we have time for any questions. It's just 20 minutes, so I don't know. But I think that's all I have to say in terms of parenting and where we go from here.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosetta. We're going to take questions at the end of today's program. So please, just if you can type your questions in the chat box, that would be useful, so that you don't forget your questions. So please keep it in mind. You've said so many things, and I think a couple of things jumped at me in terms of the manager in Yorkshire helping families. So like you said, how can we, work in our community and produce more managers like the Yorkshire manager? That's one thing. Again, early intervention has been repeated by you. This was mentioned by Mr. Odedeyi. You have come back to that as well, because what we are seeing as an issue here is lack of early intervention. And I think we need to now, imminently work on policies, or work with the government, both Nigerian government and the UK government, to see what we can do around that. And to also stress what you have mentioned in terms of the impact of abuse on children. There is evidence that it does change the brain of children when it comes to abuse. If you compare the brain of a child that has been abused with that of a child that has not been abused, there is a change in it. There are research materials out there that you can go out there and read about, so that we can all begin to work with our, like we said, we're a community. You can share whatever you read, share with someone that that, wow, I learned this, it's important for you to know this. We're not just saying this because this is how they do it in the UK. There is evidence out there. So thank you so much, Rosetta, for that. Moving on, our next speaker is Elizabeth. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 minute so I can see the screen again. I'm not sure if I have stopped sharing.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So our next speaker for today is Elizabeth Egbefor. She was admitted to the role of Solicitors of England and Wales in 2015. She's one of the 2 directors at Francis Solicitor, a busy high street firm in the borough of Lewisham. Elizabeth's primary area of practice is family and housing law, and she represents families in public and private law proceedings. Elizabeth is passionate about seeing an end to stigma associated with male victims of domestic abuse, especially within the ethnic minority communities. She's also keen to see more support given to parents whose children are taken into care. Prior to becoming a solicitor, Elizabeth worked with the civil service for 14 years, and she was involved in several pioneering projects in the civil service, one of which earned her an invitation to 10 Downing Street and another to attend the Queen's Garden Party. Elizabeth also worked in the children ministry at a local church for more than 20 years. Welcome with me, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, Tolu. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I have some slides that I want to share. So if Tolu can begin to share the slides. Basically, I'm here to just talk about some aspects of the law. I think a lot of it was covered by Rosetta just now. She mentioned the Children's Act, and I think Mr. Odedei also mentioned some of the laws around children. So I just thought I should keep it brief because we don't have a lot of time. But I think before I proceed, I'd like to reiterate what Rosetta said in regards to this myth out there that the children's services are out to get the children. Like there's this myth out there that all they want to do is just take children. I know it's something that maybe some people might, especially if you're a parent, that might not be what you want to hear coming from a solicitor who's supposed to be representing you, maybe. But I think that's a myth out there, and it's not the case. Practically, it costs the local authorities a lot of money to take children into care, and with funding lacking, it's the last thing they want to do, to be honest. So having said that, I'm going to start by looking at section 31 primarily. But before I go into that, I'll be talking about the public law outline, which is called the PLO process. Now, this PLO process, before your child is actually taken into care, the local authority have a duty to start with the PLO process, which is when the local authority is concerned about a child's well-being, they'll be looking to have meetings with the parents first and foremost before they begin to look at taking a more serious step of taking the child into care. So it's at this PLO process or at this PLO stage that we try and encourage parents as much as possible to take the necessary steps, because once the PLO starts, the local authority will always, they have a duty to tell you what their concerns are and what, why they're doing what they're doing. And then they will tell you as well what they want you to do to correct those things before they then decide, well, maybe we have to go into care proceedings or we have to go into court. So this PLO process is the stage where the parent has the final opportunity, to make the improvements that the local authority is asking them to make before children are taken into care. Now, I remember sometime last year, there was a meeting, a gathering, a conference that was held by 4 or 5 local boroughs in London, where they're coming together. They came together to discuss frameworks. So they gathered us solicitors, social workers, and people who work with children and families to sort of like discuss how they could improve the PLO process so that there's like a common framework amongst those local authorities in the southeast of London. So what they've come up with now is a process whereby they're trying to do everything possible to help the parents and to avoid going to court. So like I said, again, it's a parent's last opportunity to just do what the local authority is asking them to do in order to avoid them issuing care proceedings. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. Okay, so I think Rosetta also mentioned this previously in terms of thresholds. Now, before a local authority decides to go into care proceedings, first they'll do the PLO stage. And at that PLO stage, if there's no changes made by the parents, obviously, then the local authority have no choice but to take the matter to court. But in order for them to take the matter to court, there are some thresholds that they have to prove. So the threshold, these are the facts that the local authority must prove if they want the court to make a care or supervision order in respect of a child. And there's a duty placed on the local authority to show that the threshold criteria are met. If the threshold criteria cannot be passed, then an order cannot be made. So what are these threshold criteria? If you move on to the next slide. Okay, so it's a two-stage test. The threshold stage, there must be sufficient reasons to justify the making of a care or supervision order, right? So a care order means your child will be taken into care, they will be placed with a foster family, or there could be a supervision order whereby the child will still be in your care, but under the supervision of the local authority for a period of 6 months to a year in some cases. So the court must be satisfied that before this threshold, to pass this threshold stage, the court must be satisfied that things have happened which have already caused significant harm to a child, or there is a serious risk that significant harm will be suffered in future, or that the child is beyond parental control. So sometimes you have children whose parents cannot control them. And sometimes you have parents who actually call up social services and say to them, honestly, I can't deal with this child. Come and take this child. And the local authority have a duty to step in to protect that child. So if we move on to the next slide. Significant harm is caused by either what the parents are doing or failing to do for their children because the child is beyond parental control. And then harm is defined in the Children's Act as ill treatment, impairment of physical or mental health, including that suffered from seeing or hearing another person suffer ill treatment, and the impairment of physical, intellectual, emotional, social, or behavioral development. I just wanted to touch briefly on the one about impairment of physical or mental health, including that suffered from seeing or hearing another person suffer ill treatment, because a lot of the times I see situations where parents don't recognize that what they're doing to somebody else, maybe fighting amongst themselves, bickering amongst themselves, actually affects the child. And a lot of parents don't tend to recognize that. Sometimes they believe that it's only when you're shouting at the child or physically abusing the child, that's when the child is suffering harm. But as we can see, the mental health of a child is very important. And then ill treatment includes sexual abuse, neglect, emotional and psychological abuse. If we move on to the next slide. Okay, going on to the second stage, the welfare stage. Now, before the court also, before they grant this care order or supervision order, there's a welfare stage that also tests that must be passed. And this welfare criteria is where the court must be satisfied that it is in the best interest of the child to make an order. So whenever there's care proceedings or anything relating to a child, even in private law matters where parents are contesting custody of a child, you will always hear this word being used, the welfare of the child, what's in the best interest of the child. So the court is not necessarily concerned about what's in the best interest of the parents, which is sometimes what the parent is focusing on, what is in my best interest, how, this is how I'm feeling, nobody cares about me. But mainly what parents should be focusing on is what is in the best interest of the child. And it's possible that it's what is in your best interest that is also in the best interest of the child. But however, parents need to remember that the child always comes first, and the court will always consider what is in the best interest of the child. So what are these criteria that they look at? The court will look at the ascertainable wishes and feelings of the child, and they will consider the age and understanding of the child. So for example, in care proceedings, you could have maybe like a 12-year-old who is saying, I don't want to stay with my parents. I don't want to live with them. This is how I'm feeling. The court has a duty to listen to them and to hear what they're saying. And I think Rosetta also mentioned it, that the voice of the child has become quite important in these proceedings. So the court will always look at the wishes and feelings of the child. They will consider that. And a lot of the times, it's standard that the child will have a children's guardian anyway in the first place, who is also speaking for the child. The court will also look at the child's physical, emotional, and/or educational needs, the likely effect on them of any changes in circumstances. They will look at their age, their sex, their background, which is probably, it's one of the reasons why we're here today, where we're looking at the impact of the social care system in our community, and any other characteristics the court considers relevant. The court will also consider any harm which the child has suffered or at risk of suffering. And then they will also look at how capable each of their parents or any other relevant person is of meeting the child's needs. So this is why we have parenting assessments, we carry out risk assessments to see whether the parents can actually care for the child. Where they can't care, like Rosetta mentioned, one of the first places they look at is within the family. They will always look at the family first before they then start considering outsiders to look after the child. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. Okay, so I think one of the major focuses for me was to look at, in terms of parenting and in terms of this JAPA situation that we're in, where there's a disproportionate amount of our children being taken into care, and the likely outcomes, the negative outcomes for children in care. I think, like Mr. Odede mentioned, there was a research recently by, I think it was the University College London, where they carried out research on the outcomes for children who are taken into care. And the outcomes are not always great. There's a great proportion of children who are taken into care who end up having children who end up taken into care. And so there's a vicious circle where you have generations of children or families who are, in the care system. So the outcomes are not always great for them. So what I wanted to say, or what I would say to parents, especially Nigerian parents, in my experience, the first thing I would like to say is, or advice that I'll give to parents is, that as soon as you are contacted by social services or even the school, if you're that concerned about maybe what the school is saying to you, then you should seek advice, either from the advocacy services or depending on the level that the matter has reached, you need to seek the advice of a solicitor as soon as possible. And when it's at the PLO stage, which is the public law outline stages, where the local authorities have only just started getting involved and are telling you their concerns, you need to engage the services of a solicitor as soon as possible. And also, I think it's quite important for parents to seek advocacy services as well. Yeah, so the first thing is seek for the services of a solicitor, seek an advocate as quickly as possible. And then secondly, engage with your allocated social worker and with other professionals. I've found that in my experience working with parents, this is a very big issue. And I think Roxetta also mentioned it depends on the dynamics between the social worker and the parents. But I think a lot of parents already come in with that attitude of fighting the social worker. But there are great social workers out there. In fact, the majority of them are great. if I'm being honest. If you work with them, they will work with you. So if you engage with your allocated social worker, engage with the professionals, look at what the concerns the local authorities are raising, and try as much as possible to do even beyond what they're saying. So that, because when you're doing it, they're recording it, and you're telling them, I've done this, I've done that, and you show proof. And that can only be a good thing. Thirdly, recognize, accept, and correct your mistakes and take responsibility for them. One of the biggest problems we have, or one of the biggest issues, is parents not accepting that they've made mistakes. And again, it's a cultural thing where you feel like if you shout on your child, there's nothing wrong with it. But you have to look at the level at which your child is. You have to look at your environment. You have to study the culture to see whether is this acceptable or unacceptable. So recognize, denial can complicate things, and we get that a lot where parents are in denial, especially parents from our background, where they're in denial. Oh, can I not say this, or can I not do this to my child? It's normal back home and all that. But you're in a different environment, so you need to be very aware of that. Number 4 is do not be aggressive.
In the castle.
If we can mute, please. I think, okay. So do not be aggressive, and listen to your solicitor's advice, and always tell the truth. Aggression is one of our biggest problems. I know that it's in our nature to, we're loud and all that, but again, it's a cultural thing. We've had to educate social workers, not from our background anyway. So we've had situations where we've had to educate social workers and managers about people from our background. Look, it's not necessarily that this person is being aggressive, but there are people from our background who are quite aggressive. They're aggressive towards the social workers. They're aggressive towards us solicitors. They're aggressive in court. And I'm sure if social workers are here, they can identify with that. Another issue that I find is that sometimes parents don't tell the truth. So I use this analogy: if you go to a GP and you don't tell the GP what your issues are, you're hiding it. The GP can only prescribe the medicine to suit what you've told them. And then sometimes we find situations where parents will tell us one thing, and then the social workers or the local authority will come back and tell us something different. And I think Mr. Odede, you mentioned it, like it's not a case of you just coming and saying, this is what happened, that is what happened. It's we need to hear from the other side, and then we'll be able to give the correct advice to alleviate or to stop matters from getting worse. Then also parents need to remember that this is about the child and not necessarily about them. And they must always consider what is in the best interest of the child. And then seek help and support from family and friends and from professionals. And do not be afraid to ask relevant and legitimate questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes our people are afraid to ask questions. Sometimes it's out of ignorance, and sometimes it's out of fear. They fear that they don't want to escalate matters. But I think it's really important to ask questions, especially if you have a solicitor and you have a good relationship with your solicitor. It's really important to ask questions, no matter how silly you think it is. At least ask that question, because you have that confidentiality clause between you and your solicitor, and it's not everything that you discuss with your solicitor that the solicitor has to divulge, unless of course it's something to do with it's something that will cause harm to the child, in which case the solicitor may then have to report it, or it's something to do with integrity and things like that. But I think it's quite important that parents should ask questions. And then finally, address and deal with any misconceptions, e.g. racial misconceptions, like say things, sometimes people feel, oh, it's because I'm Black, it's because I'm Nigerian, that's why this is happening to me. They're trying to take our children away. I think we've talked about that before. There's so many misconceptions out there, but it's not always the case. Parents need to look deep down within themselves and ask themselves, this thing that has happened, was it caused by me? Was it caused by my actions, by what I did or what I didn't do? Because I find, in my experience, the parents tend to blame everybody else but themselves. They tend not to recognize what they're doing and how the actions that they've taken have led to where we are. So a lot of the times parents are in denial and they blame everybody else for themselves. Everybody else is wrong but them. So I think it's really important that parents need to recognize their actions and what they've done and why they are in that position that they are in. So yeah, that's me done. I just thought it was important to talk about the Section 21 factors, the thresholds, and if you have any questions, you can ask. I think Tolu said at the end of it, and my details, if you need to give me a call or email me, I think we'll put it at the on the chat as well, so you can contact me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. You have covered a lot tonight. And I know this is just the beginning. This is our very first event together, and we will have more coming up because we have a lot of work on our hand. There are some things that you shared that really jumped at me in terms of parents' lack of understanding of domestic violence and how that impacts on the children. So again, it's something everyone here needs to take away, in terms of how, we manage our own feelings, behavior in front of our children, irrespective of whatever we are going through. Also, the welfare of the child is paramount. Where we are coming from, a lot of us growing up, our voices were not heard, we were only seen. And we're in a country whereby the children's voice it needs to be heard, basically, because it helps you to build confidence. It helps you to build your self-esteem. We want to hear what the children have to say. And for parents coming from Nigeria to balance that in terms of what is happening in the United Kingdom, there can be a struggle. It's a dilemma. And I think it's an area for families here to take away and begin to work on in terms of to have a better relationship with their children as well. We are going to have our question session at the very end. I just want us to carry on, and if you have any question, you can put it in the chat like I explained earlier. So our next speaker for tonight, they are foster carers. So I've got Mr. Akin and Mrs. Rachel Akinlaon. They are both approved foster carers, and they've been fostering since 2005. They fostered sibling groups, and they both sit on fostering panels for 2 separate local authorities as independent members. So join me to welcome tonight Rachel and Akinlaon.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
good evening.
Good evening. I've been introduced. My name is Rachel. Somewhere on your screen, you'll find a gentleman whose name is Akinlaon. That's my husband. We are foster carers, as you've heard. But before we talk about our role, without the children coming into care, we wouldn't have a job. And we need to place the child at the center of our discussion today, place the child at the center of our thoughts. So if you consider, just imagine yourself as a 6-year-old child, something's happened, you've been taken away from your parents, that threshold that you've heard the professionals talk about today has been reached, and a decision has been made that that 6-year-old child is removed from the parents out of no doing of their own. Whatever led to them being taken away from home would have left some trauma on them, definitely. Would have led to some confusion. And sometimes guilt. Take, for instance, Mr. Dede spoke about a child that made a disclosure at school, and that child is now removed. Perhaps the siblings are accusing that child of, it's your fault because of what you said. So there is that guilt that that child feels that it's what they said that led to their family breaking up and they being in care. And these children would have been exposed to quite a bit of abuse. Sometimes it's not even just one type. It's a combination of different types of abuse that we've heard today.
It's working. Oh, if the child is working, then one more is working.
And this abuse would leave them with deep-rooted trauma that sometimes we do not see now until many years to come.
I didn't have any questions, though.
And trauma that would affect their behavior and their development going forward.
Okay.
That's what happens to them when they come into care. That's what they come into care with. They're going to live with people that are complete strangers to them. They would have been removed by people that are complete strangers to them anyway. The professionals just coming in and taking them off their parents, moving them to another set of complete strangers to live with. They would struggle with separation and loss. If they're already school-age children, they might have to change schools, lose their friendships. Sometimes siblings are even split up. And just imagine if it's a baby that's meant to be in the care of the mother, being nurtured, now being removed, that initial warmth is missing. We have, it's not a privilege, but we have had to take in a day-old baby before, right from the hospital. And it's quite surreal to have to be in that position to give that child their first nurturing, their first love, just to step into that role to look after that newborn baby. What also happens to them when they come into care is that there is a loss of identity sometimes. It's not every time that the right match is made or can be achieved. And you'll find that this child is placed in a family where they stick out like a sore thumb. They have nothing in common with the family they've been placed with. It doesn't mean that they will not give them that warmth and nurture that they need, but they just look different. They feel different. The environment is completely different. And there are many aspects of a child's identity that will, be impacted by them coming into care. The food, the dressing, the language, the faith. Sometimes not all of that is met. Can I have the second slide, please? So who are these people that step in as foster carers? When the local authority takes a child, when the child goes into care, the local authority becomes what we call the corporate parents. But corporate parents don't have a house. They cannot provide warmth. They have to employ some people to step in to do that job, and those are foster carers. Foster carers are those that have gone through the process and are approved to look after children who have been removed from their birth families. That could be for a day, a week, a month, or for many years. Indeed, we have had a child for just one day, and the longest we've had is a sibling group that we've had for 11 years, a sibling group of 4, And we've had some positive outcomes with that, you know, because I heard Mr. Odede say sometimes, you know, they are the ones that don't go to uni or this or that. Yes, that's very true. But sometimes coming into care actually gives children better outcomes that they could have had when they were, if they were at home with their parents, because of the experience they've had. Foster carers are professionals in their own rights who are doing a marvelous job at providing nurture, and nurture, love, and a safe and secure home environment to children. If anyone asks me, who are you? What do you do? I tell them I'm a professional parent. That's what I do. And I do take myself seriously in that, because there are times that you could feel like, oh, the others kind of try to undermine you, but I know that the job I do, they can't do it as much as I can't do the job they do. So yes, I am indeed a professional. Who can become a foster carer? You can be any gender, sexuality, any ethnicity, single, married, divorced, widowed. That wouldn't matter. The main requirements of being a foster carer is that you are over the age of 21 years. There is no upper age limit. A medical will be carried out. You are expected to be in reasonably good health and fit to look after a child. So they're not going to give you a baby that needs changing when you have a problem with your back and you cannot bend down to change diapers. They're not going to give you a 6-year-old who needs some running after when you have mobility issues. So those kind of things will be taken into consideration. They're not expecting your health to be perfect, but you must be in reasonably good health. I'm a panel member. I'm an independent panel member, and I've been on panels where a foster carer made an application. There are 8 different kinds of medications for different ailments, and they're still approved. You ask why? Because those conditions are well managed and are not deemed to affect the ability to look after a child. You must not have a restriction on your stay in the United Kingdom to be able to foster, to be a foster carer. I think mostly for the sake of the child, because if a child comes into your care, they're fully settled, long-term, you're doing a great job, and then Home Office says, sorry, we cannot renew your visa, that child will have to be displaced again, will have to move. So you would need to have no restriction on your stay in the UK to foster. You must have a space in your home and your heart for a child. Foster children must have a room of their own. If they are not to 18 months, possibly 2 years, they could be in a cot in the bedroom of the foster carer. But anything above that age, they would need a room of their own, and they cannot share with any member of your household. If social services deem it fit, they could share with a sibling, but then a risk assessment will have to be carried out for that to happen. And most importantly, it's not just the space in your home, it's the space in your heart. If you are one person that cannot stand the presence of children, you can imagine when they come in, they're usually very dysregulated. It's crying, it's wailing, it's sleepless nights. If you can't go through that, it's probably not the job for you. You have not committed a crime against vulnerable individuals. An enhanced DBS will be done. They cannot remove children from abuse, from places where they're not safe, and then put them with other people that will not keep them safe. So you must be an adult that can keep a child safe, that hasn't had any criminal convictions. You are physically and emotionally available for that child. So there is a difference between having the space in your home, having the space in your heart, but if you are not there physically to meet their needs. And also emotionally as well. The young person, it could be fostering a teenager who doesn't need that much of physical looking after, nurturing. but they've been through a lot. They want to be able to talk to you. Yes, they will come in late. They will have all the teenage issues that you can imagine. But you must be emotionally available to be able to listen to what they have to say, to be able to guide them through their growing years. A lot of disclosures will come. You must have the maturity to handle that. You must be able to work with other professionals because, yes, you will be doing a lot of that. So we heard some of the other professionals today talk about when these children come into care, the lack of Black ethnic minority foster carers. It's a national shortage of foster carers right across the board. But I think we do have a big issue with not having enough foster carers of Black ethnic minority. At the moment, we are transitioning. We are doing transition for a young person. Now we're getting them all the way from Wales because there isn't anybody suitable. I'm in Essex, so you can imagine the distance. Putting ourselves forward as a community ensures that should a child in our community come into care, there is someone who can take them in, who understands their culture and identity needs, amongst many other things. They wouldn't place that as priority. It's the nurture, it's being able to provide a safe and secure home environment. But we also know that there are other aspects of their identity that are important that they need to carry along with them as they grow older. As a community as well, we can also support children's services, not only by providing foster care, but by providing a resource base for understanding our ethnic community better. On panel, I found myself sometimes when we are either reviewing or approving new foster carers or existing foster carers, that where we have Black ethnic minority carers or a child in care who is an ethnic minority, who is Black, and there are times that you can tell that they defer to me to be able to tell them certain things, or I can see from a different perspective and say, actually, what that person is saying, this is how it pans out in our culture. This is what that child needs. And if we are not in that position, there is no way we can have that influence. We cannot have that input. We cannot make a difference if we don't get ourselves into those positions. So there is nothing to be afraid of. Many people don't like the scrutiny. Yes, you will be scrutinized. I would never tell you no. You will be. You'll be checked in and out. But they are not expecting you to be a saint. Certainly not. Your life experiences are not going to be used against you. It shows that you have lived, and you may be able to use that to support a child coming into care. I have been on a panel where we have actually approved a former drug addict, fully recovered, and is doing a marvelous job being a foster carer, because it can bring that experience to supporting young children, helping them not to toe the path that is told before. He can use that experience in working with their parents, because whatever happens as a foster carer, you will be working with parents. He can use that experience to work with parents. You are not going to be judged for having lived. But the key thing is that we have to be transparent. And I've heard Elizabeth talk about transparency today. I've heard Mr. Ojedai talk about transparency today. We tend to hide. We tend to withhold information, thinking that if we let everything out, it's going to be used against us. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that they will not deem you fit to be a foster carer. It's a job you want to do, and I believe that if we step forward to do it, we're doing it from a good place in our hearts. So if you're not deemed suitable to be one, it shouldn't be bad enough for us to have to lie or withhold information to try to qualify. What do we get as foster carers? For me, it's the satisfaction that I'm making a difference. For 19 years that we have been fostering, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I think at the beginning, I didn't know the impact that we were making until much later. Much later, when some of them that have left 12, 14 years ago are still part of our family, and the difference that we have made. So that is the key thing for me. But you will receive payments that will cover your costs. You will not be out of pocket for looking after a child. And the good thing is that the government also recognizes what we are doing. So there's very generous tax allowances for the payments that are made for the care of the children. So I will really, really suggest, I would encourage anyone who has this space in their hearts and in their home to please consider fostering. I would call it the best out of all the professions that I've spoken today. It's the best of them all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Really, really appreciate your contribution. Yes, I'm a supervising social worker at the moment, and I totally agree with what Rachel Akilawa said. It is not an easy task. However, it is rewarding. By the time you see children that you have made, positive impacts in their lives, coming back to your door to say thank you, it just warms your heart, to be able to say that, yes, I'm part of this child's journey, or I'm part of this children's journey. So thank you for sharing that. Again, back to the theme of this year's Social Work Day, Viva, which is collective, working collectively together to implement changes. So what we are looking at is working harmoniously with the children's services. And this is an area, that we need people from our community, from the Nigerian community, from the African community to come and support us as part of the children's services. There is a huge shortage of social foster carers at the moment. And like, Rachel, clearly said, we do our assessment, it's rigorous, but we are not doing it because we are just being nosy. There are some issues that may have happened in your lives that, it might affect or impact the kind of care you will give to the child if you have not adequately dealt with it. And you might say, for instance, you have a child who has been sexually abused, who's coming to your care, and you didn't disclose at any point during your own assessment that you've been sexually abused in the past. When that child comes into your care, it will impact on how you meet that child's care needs. So we're not scrutinizing because we're just nosy. We just want to be able to see, the circumstances in your lives, how you bounce back, from them, how resilient are you? Because when you look after other people's children, there are lots of challenges there, and we just want to be sure that you are able to meet the needs of the children. So again, we're calling on, families from our community to step in. We do not look at children homes as our first option. When we can't find foster carers to look after or to meet the needs of the children, then we have to look outside. And this is basically for children from, mostly teenagers, because we don't have foster carers that can meet their needs. So it won't be our first call. If you look at any local authority, our first call will not be children's home or supported living. We look within this, the local authority, foster carers that have been assessed by the local authority. But because there is a huge shortage, I don't know if anybody watched Panorama yesterday, they were talking about local authorities going busted, local authorities like Slough already busted, Havering is almost, there. So we're trying our best, to help out, to help families. And we also need support from our community. Come on in and, we will do this job together. Our last speaker for today is John Wedger. I'm not sure if John is somewhere here. John, if you are here.
Yes, he is.
I'm here. I'm here, Tolly.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So, just to, quickly talk about John, is a former Scotland Yard detective who is currently running campaigns for protection of whistleblowers and justice for the victims and survivors of child abuse. I don't know if anybody remembers the story of Baby P.
Yes.
This is Peter Connelly. John was heavily involved in that case, and he was commended for the work he did, during working with the family and the investigation. So join me to welcome John. And John, you can take the floor.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tolu, and thank you to your community for giving me this opportunity. And I will help wherever I can. My narrative might be from slightly a different perspective. I'm a retired Metropolitan Police detective who specialised in child vice, child prostitution, and child abuse investigations. And I became quite well known. I came to prominence for my role as a whistleblower because I stood up against the Metropolitan Police and ultimately the British government for the deliberate cover-up of child sexual exploitation, child prostitution, call it what you want, which did result in the actual murder of children and the premature death of children. And I now campaign. I gave evidence at the recent government ANHCSCW, the independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation, and 5 points of my evidence went on to change the law regarding safeguarding in 5 different areas. So I've got a bit of a ground in there. I now advocate and help victims and survivors of historic child abuse and institutional abuse. And so I sort of deal with the raw end of things. I've listened with interest to your speakers tonight, and you've had a really well-rounded approach to it. And so much of what some are saying resonates with me for my role as a child abuse investigator. Now, I worked as a detective for many years and quite a few years. Firstly, was working with Scotland Yard's Vice Unit, dealing with children at risk that were caught up in prostitution. I then went on to work investigating child abuse for quite a few London boroughs, one being Haringey, which was a venue for both the Victoria Climbié and then a couple of years later, the Baby P case. So it was a unit that was really put under the microscope. And I also worked in the borough of Harrow and Brent on the same role. And the Victoria Climbié, sorry, got hiccups, was quite pivotal because the Lord Lammy inquiry post 2004, and then it was more compounded after Peter Connolly, Baby P's death, really looked at the failings that went on every level. I worked what was known as joint investigation. So as a detective, a referral would come in. Now, the referral sources could be from many places: schools, scout groups, police, local neighbours, community leaders, hospitals, wherever there was a fear a child was suffering what they class as significant harm. We would be called in, we would have a strategy meeting, we'd sit around with social services in a joint investigation capacity. Now, the social services that I work with were specially trained social workers that had to go on special sort of paediatric courses and investigative courses. And one of them was the ABE, the Achieving Best Evidence course. So they were trained to a very high standard. The boroughs I worked were in the London poverty-stricken boroughs, which had, especially Haringey, had a huge sort of mixed diversity community. There was a lot of West Africans, a lot of Congolese were coming over after the conflicts there, and they were housed in the boroughs. So they started doing what was called proportional representation, where if you had a case involving a family from Jamaica, you'd go along to the initial investigation with a Jamaican social worker. If it was a Nigerian family, you went along with a Nigerian family, and it worked really well. Because one of the main failings was regarding discipline, and I grew up in 1970s United Kingdom, where we had a very harsh discipline, especially in our educational system, where teachers would hit you, your parents would hit you, and the police would hit you. So everyone would hit you. The Jamaican community would have what they call licks, where the parents would belt the kids with a leather belt, and it was classed as reasonable chastisement. The Nigerian community had quite a staunch approach to discipline, and again, it was classed, within that culture as reasonable chastisement, but it conflicted with how sort of the United Kingdom has become quite liberalised. And this is where I would say 90% of the problems occurred was around parental discipline. Now, when I was on VI, I worked with kids that were exploited sexually, and every single one come from the care system. So we've heard from foster carers, God bless them, but there is another strand to this, and these are the care homes. Now, what we got to look at is that 80% of child abuse goes on within the home. So if we had a perfect world, we wouldn't be having this conversation, none of us. We'd have no need really for proactive and reactive social workers. It'll be an admin role. But unfortunately, we don't have a perfect world. And we have a world in which children are at risk, mainly from sexual abuse, from those within the close family. So not even the extended family, the close family, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunties. And this is where the risk comes from. Now, it's something people don't talk about, and it's something that people will deny if asked, but it is a huge reality. People lie, they're deceptive, they're perverted. And unfortunately, they drag children into that conspiracy. And when a child is hurt, what you got to understand is, if we can imagine a child is made up, or an adult is made up of three things, three different balls, one stacked on top of each other, right? We have emotional intelligence as one ball. We have intellectual intelligence, and then we have physical well-being. Now, when you abuse a child, they can go on to educationally and academically achieve to a normal standing. In fact, there are many cases in when they actually excel in this field. And you find that a lot with like CEOs of companies that when they've done, the psychology of it, they find a greater deal of narcissism within the managerial, high achieving, sort of work placements, because it's all about the need for greed and everything else, and they don't care. It's very Darwinian, if I put it that way, in business. When we talk about physical well-being, again, people can achieve monumentally, even if they've come from an abused background, and that's quite straightforward. In as much as they've been hurt, and no one will hurt me as much as I can hurt me. So you will see professional boxers that go on to become world champions that come from physical abuse. There's a great percentage of our armed forces, especially within the elite special forces regiments, that have come from poverty and abuse, because no one can hurt them as much as they've been hurt. So you can achieve extremely well academically and physically, but the one thing a kid will always fail, an adult will always fail on, is emotionally they will be stunted. When you hurt a child, their emotional clock stops. And unless they get the right therapy, trauma counselling, discernment, whatever it is, they will always remain a broken child. And how that impacts on life is that if we're having an adult discussion here, every one of us. And there were some people might take difference to what I'm saying. We might be at variance with what I'm saying. But as adults, we can discuss it reasonably and we can come to a common ground. A broken child who could, well, you know, an adult that is a broken child will just kick off and scream and shout. They'll be effing this, effing that. I hate you. I want to kill you, or become extremely violent because you're dealing with the broken child. So under normal sort of living, you won't notice it. But whenever there is a problem, an issue in life, or a bit of trauma, the broken child comes through. And that will also affect how they deal with relationships later in life. So a child that's been abused has a greater propensity to abuse themselves. So someone was saying about a kid that's been in care is at greater risk to their own children. And that is right. A mother who's come from abuse has a huge risk of failing to protect her own child. And this is what we see happening. And they end up with there's a shocking statistic. What is likely to cause a child in a home to be 30 times sexually abused than from a standard home if we're dealing with a broken home? And it's the presence of a step parent, or foster parent. Sorry, I apologise. The presence of a step parent. We live in a broken culture that has lost a lot of its values, and a lot of Christian values have gone. We have this baby father, baby mother, baby daddy, baby mummy narrative, and way of thinking, which is endemic through our youth. And that allows for abuse to come into the family home. And social services have to step in because the kid's at risk. And this is what happens. Now, when I was investigating child abuse with the social workers, we dealt with a lot of dysfunctionality, horrific abuse. We went from just over chastising a kid to murder, torture, kids living in their own feces and filth. It was just appalling. And the baby P is testimony to one of the cases I dealt with, in which they were just torturing this kid monumentally. We've seen a lot, especially last year, the last half of last year. I think there was 5 cases in which a child that was at risk, was known to social services, right, ended up being murdered by the parent and the foster parent. And I think 3 of the 5 cases were lesbian parents. Now, again, I'm not casting any aspersions, I'm just quoting what went on. But these were kids that didn't come out the ether. These are kids that were known to the system. Okay, so there was a failing both in the police, social services, the family, and the local community. Now, the problem we have is that we do progress as a society, but sometimes it's not always for the right reason. And the lady said very early on, one of the first speakers, about post-2004 Victoria Climbié Lord Lammy inquiry, that they looked at everyone needs a responsibility for kids in our society. Well, if only that was the case. Now, what happened was there was political intervention by Tony Blair. And he brought in a bit of legislation called Any Child Matters, or Every Child Matters. And people think, well, this is a major step forward, which is what we heard earlier, that everyone has a right to, as a responsibility to look after a kid. But we have nefarious, dark people in our community that haven't got love and kindness and compassion in their heart. They're damaged, and they are liars and they are deceivers. And it is the police's role to investigate and to detect these people and put them where they should be, in prison. Now, Any Child Matters, how this came into it was that the social services prior to this legislation coming in were centrally funded by government. They were centrally funded by the Home Office. So if a child, there was a Section 17 inquiry, a kid comes to notice through the referral system. The police have the power, I think it's under Section 46 of the Children's Act. The Children's Act is a tremendously strong bit of legislation, right? And it predeceased some more antiquated act, but it was good. It's what the family courts work on. Section 46 gave the police the power to do a PPO, a police protective order. That only lasts, I think it's 48 or 72 hours, one of them. And then the social services have to then go to court and get what's called an EPO, an emergency protective order, which is really the basis of the family court and the care system coming in. And this is where us two entities would take together. The police would go in and they would seize a kid. Now, all of that process is expensive. It goes through the family court. Lawyers can charge £450 an hour. And you really now have to pay for justice because it's incredibly expensive. And the family courts are closed courts, so they don't have a public gallery. And the conspiracy theorists call them like secret child stealing courts and all that. But we'll put that to one side for a minute. But if we go back to this bit of legislation, no matter what the bill was, the Home Office picked it up. And rightly so, because we pay our taxes. But Tony Blair turned around and said, we can save so many billion if we streamline this process and we make social services self-funding. So after this legislation got posted, it said that if a kid is taken into care, the government will award that social services department, for whatever borough or local authority is, £35,000. So therefore, it become a money-making entity. So the more kids that went into care, the more that social services department got funded. So before the funding wasn't an issue, now it became an issue because they started going into administration and losing money, which is what we've just heard from the last paragraph that Tulu mentioned. Right, so it all comes down to the money. You must follow the money. And what happened then was, and we see it with the police, when I joined the police, we were properly trained and we were career officers and we were professional. Now, there's a lot of failings in the police. There's a lot of issues with the police. But the Scotland Yard detectives are sort of revered all around the world as being a centre of excellence. I would rather be tried in a British court than, say, a Colombian court, for example. Now, what happened then was that there was an overzealous protocol within social services to, instead of looking at an alternative for a kid going to care, because it's not the best place for a child to be, albeit 80% of abuse goes on in the home, we would look at the extended family. We would look at brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles. Can you look after this kid? It's better that they're kept with their siblings and they go into the care system, right? Because the care system, when it comes to the homes of which I dealt with, were failing monumentally. And again, they were a money-making entity. And I want to explain that money-making procedure. I'm not on about the foster carers in the family background. I'm on about the homes, the children's homes. Right, so after this bit of legislation, the amount of kids going into care, there is a statistic. It's something like 1,000%. It's skyrocketed. And yes, there is legislation that says that if a kid must suffer significant harm before these protective orders are passed, and there must be this and there must be that. But I'm going to tell you all now, as someone who worked under Her Majesty's police service, I never worked with one officer, not one officer, who hadn't given false testimony, who had not lied under oath. Not one. And any officer said they didn't is a lie themselves. I know police officers lie under oath. I know for a fact that social workers lie under oath. And they do it for many reasons. It's not always corruption, but a lot of it is to cover their own backsides because they've screwed up. Social workers, when I worked there, were notoriously bad at not keeping original notes, which was part of the evidence gathering procedure, that they must keep written original notes, and rarely did they. They would manufacture these notes later on down the judicial process. And as a result of that, it could cause, malpractice within the justice system. And it become a money-making. At the same time, they used foster caring as a business. It became a business. They were allowing social workers to become foster carers, which I feel, as a public servant, we were not allowed to have any other licensed jobs. As a police officer, I could not become a licensed taxi driver, a licensed publican. I could not do that. Anything that needed a license from the local authority, I could not do that because of corruption. Yet social workers were allowed to become foster carers. They were also allowed to set up fostering agencies in which they could then contract it out. Children's homes could make, back when I was on it, £2,000 per child per week. A lot of these kids' homes they were small entities. You could buy them right, out the Dalton's Weekly and things like that, like you could buy an old people's home, you could buy a kid's home, and you could then set yourself up, and you could have 5 children in there, for example. That was the average, and you'll fill that quickly. You could be making £10,000 a week. I'm going to give you an example. When I looked into the vice problem, and my narrative's out there, you can see my narrative, and it also went on to become written evidence in the government inquiry. When I looked at the children's homes in the borough of Haringey, which had a disproportionate amount, 23 homes for a small authority.
Hello,
Each
John.
had,
Sorry that I'm interrupting. You've got 2 more minutes to round
yeah,
up.
okay, yeah. Okay, what I'm saying was each single one had 5 kids. And when I approached them, on average, out of them 5 children, 3 of them were working as child prostitutes from Thursday through to Monday. And not at any point did social services, the police missing persons, the vice unit or the child protection services step in to help. So in summary of this, it is a failed system. The thing to do is keep the wolf from your door, protect your children, love your children, make sure they're catered for emotionally, educationally, physically, and spiritually. Because once the police start coming into it, it is a money-making entity, and there is a legal presumption that any child coming from the third world is coming from poverty and corruption and abuse. So there is this underlying presumption. So as a West African community, you really are struggling against it. So keep your family tight, protect them and love them, and hopefully the wolf won't be at your door. My narrative, I don't mean it to upset any adult, but I'm not here to placate adults. My job and my mission is to protect the children, and I hope that what I've said has been of benefit. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for that.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone, for all of your support, all the speakers today. You've all been fantastic. I think I'm getting a feedback from here. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so what we're going to do now is take questions, because I'm mindful of time. We did say 9 o'clock, so apologies that we are running a bit late. So if you want to ask any question here today, please, we'll just invite you to raise your hands, because we are having some technical difficulties with the system. You can't put in your questions, but what you can do is either raise your hands, or you can send the questions to me directly, and I'll read your questions out. Is that okay? I think I will leave that in the hands of Linda. Linda will, anchor that, and she will take all the questions. I yield my mic.
Okay, so thank you everyone for your contribution. It was actually a very, very, very informative. I've actually raised my hand because I had a question, and my question is, I suppose, directed at Elizabeth. Thank you for your contribution. I actually did put something in the comments box. So during your presentation, I think you reiterated time and time again that families should seek legal help. What I wanted to know, if you're able to answer this, is for families affected by JAPA, and I'm assuming these are families who don't have their stay formalized, what help what help can they get from the legal system? Are they entitled to legal aid, advocacy? Obviously it's a very large issue, but people who come into contact with social services, the first thing they're going to ask themselves is, can I afford this, or where do I get the legal help from? Are you able to give us some kind of insight into what they can do?
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda. Yeah, okay, so whenever a child is taken into care, or once a PLO process has started, you're automatically entitled to legal aid. It's not means tested. So the only time a parent will probably have an issue is if it was private proceedings where you're talking about contact arrangements and things like that. But once social services gets involved, that parent automatically, mother, father, are automatically entitled to legal aid, whether you just came in or not. Because sometimes we do represent parents who live abroad, for example. So they're entitled to it as a parent. As long as you have parental responsibility for that child, you are entitled to legal aid.
Okay, thank you so much for that. That really helps, actually.
Yeah. And also, sorry, just also say something. So there are instances where, as a parent as well, if you have come in and your immigration status is not great, in terms of what Rosetta raised around poverty, even though you are entitled to legal aid in terms of the legal proceedings where you don't have to pay anything, you do get situations where even though your legal fees are being paid, you don't really have the money to take care of yourself or even take care of the child. And that's one area that social services sometimes fails in. So you really have to fight for that parent to get social services to help that parent. So sometimes you get parents, they don't have money, they don't have accommodation, and that might be one of the issues that has been raised. Well, if I cannot work, how do I get the accommodation too? So you really have to fight for that parent to get social services to help them. There's something called no recourse to public funds. You could direct the parents there to get that help, that funding they need. Their food banks, their food stamps. The social services does help as much as they can. But again, we're talking about funding issues here as well. But the help is out there, definitely. The help is out there.
Thank you so much for that. So that's actually quite interesting. But can I just ask you, I mean, if does anyone have any other questions, by the way?
My hands are raised.
Yeah.
Yes, my hands are up.
Yeah, so hold on. I'm going to mention the way it is on my screen. So I can see Ebere. So Ebere, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, please. Good evening, everyone. I'm a nurse and I'm a cultural lead for Nigerian diaspora chairman. My question is, I have to first of all thank all the presenters. That is a well-presented event this evening, and my credit as well goes to our detective John for all these honesty, very transparent speaker. My question goes to I think it's Elizabeth, the solicitor. No, the foster parents. But I know that Elizabeth actually mentioned something about one of the child in care who was posted in care, and apparently that child got pregnant. I believe that this child went into foster parents because of probably into for safeguarding, and again the child ended up getting pregnant. I want to know, this is another safeguarding, because if a foster parent, so how can we tackle this? Because the child has been taken out of care of the parents, taken into foster care who they believe that can safeguard this child, and say the child ended up. And that draws my attention for what John have said. You know, not some of the professionals are not transparent, are not open, you know, to give an account, you know, exactly the picture of what is going on in that family before that kid is being taken. And I have, from my experience, I have represented some of the parents in dealing with social services cases, which I found, honestly, at times, I'm not trying to belittle most of the social workers that presented tonight, but I found them not very transparent, not being honest in terms of me involving in a particular case. So my question is, with that foster parent now that the child has been taken and she's got pregnant, what is how can they deal with it, such cases? And my question again, which I have been trying to ask in the times of the system we are, and that question has been coming into me as a professional. Why is it that the safeguarding is only from homes? Reason I ask that, because there's a lot of safeguarding out there in terms of bullying in schools, which we have seen a lot in the pictures in the social media. And some of the teachers are aware that these children are going through abuse, because bullying is an abuse. And when it's being reported, it's not being dealt with. So these are my questions tonight towards the social workers for them to answer this. And thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebere. Yeah, thank you. Rosetta, do you want to take that?
On the issue of bullying, I would say every school has anti-bullying what do you call it? Policy to actually follow. Yes. We're not going to do their work for them, just like I don't expect a teacher to come and do my work as a social worker. So they do have anti-bullying policies. We do have cases like that come to our attention, and we put it back to the school to say they actually have to do something about it, because they have to. It is their domain, it is their premises, and parents need to know that their children Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay, there's just interference there. Yes, for parents, they need to know that if their children leave their home to go to school, that their children are actually safe. And if you look on social media, very recently, you know, these young people are actually killing themselves in their bedroom, yeah, because they just got fed up. They just felt like people were not acting in their interest, and they've been bullied. They could not share. They don't know who to trust, and they end up hanging themselves in their bedroom. So there are anti-bullying policies. If it comes to attention, of course, we do take it up. The second question, what is the second question? Teenage pregnancy.
Fostering placement. Safeguarding in fostering.
Yeah, safeguarding in fostering placement. I mean, safeguarding is everybody's business. Now, we have foster carers, and we know the foster carers that we have, they actually know their jobs. But being in a foster carer's home is not a prison for these children. I mean, these young people do go out to have fun. You know, they're allowed to go out. So the pregnancy, number one, I want to know how the pregnancy actually happened, because in some cases you actually find out that it's among their peers, you know, and some of them actually want to have children. I was in West Sussex last year. A young person on my case, she got pregnant, and she got pregnant deliberately. She is a young person in need, so much attention, and she just wanted that attention on her and the baby, and she got herself pregnant. So it's not like the foster carers are actually not doing their jobs. They are actually doing their jobs, but there is an extent. So a foster carer can take a young person who's very young to the GP for contraception and things like that. But it's actually the choice of the young person, isn't it, to say, yes, I want protection, or no, I don't want protection. So it's a very, it's a difficult one, but these people are not in prison. They're in foster care placement, and they do go out and do their business. I'll be very, very worried if they were actually exploited. I mean, I'm not condoning the fact that as young people, they need to be parents themselves, but there's sexual abuse, and then there's other bit on a scale where they're actually going out and prostituting. So that would be one that would really, really worry me. So,
thank you, Lisetta. Thank you so much. Rachel, do you want to quickly make a contribution towards that? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I won't be long, I promise. When I was speaking, I talked about trauma and how it affects development and behavior. And that's a practical example of it, because for some of these children, what they have experienced, which may not show when they're 6, 7, 8, can show up when they turn into when they get into their teenage years, alongside the usual teenage issues that come with it. So there is only a limit to what the foster carer can do. There are a lot of influences out there, and these are vulnerable children. They've been removed from their family. They know they're in care. The foster carers care a lot about them, but there's that element where they're always out there seeking love, and they're very vulnerable. People will take advantage of them. And there's a limit to what the foster carer can do. We, as much as Rosetta said, we can take them to the GP, They can have counseling and all that, but it's really not going to take everything away.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And just to add to that, if such a situation should occur, we will definitely do a level of investigation as well to see how best we can support the child. The next person I'm seeing on my screen is Bolanho. Can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? You have 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Oh, hi, thank you. I mean, it's been an incredible day. Thank you, everyone. I've been observing, it feels like two scenarios. There's the case of the myth, you know, that the social workers have addressed, Rosetta and Elizabeth, you know, So there's that aspect of, oh, they want to take our children from us, which the first speaker almost emphasized, you know, so we went on that tangent before the professionals then came to kind of change it. But now we have the police officer who's kind of buttressed that. So where are we now? You know, here's my observation. As a parent, I'm speaking now as a parent, for somebody who has had contact with social services, with children's services, because I have a son with special needs. So I have had contact with social services. I had a teenager who was recalcitrant, who left the house, who left university. So I have been through the process. So I'm going to speak from experience. I feel like it's a bit of everything. You know, I have seen professionals being weird and almost trying to, you know, there's a culture of mistrust between everyone. We don't trust them, they don't trust us. So when my autistic son has shown some traces, the way I've been spoken to, I feel like they suspect me, which is what I'm trying to say. And straight away, I'm thinking, where's the support? But because I've had training, you know, because Rosetta spoke eloquently about how approach is everything, you know, so I'm thinking you are not about to goad me into a fight. You know, it was unprofessional. My son has raised some issues of concern. I thought we were here for best interest of child. And what's this tone coming at me like I've been doing stuff to my son at home? Like, this is not what I'm here for. So without getting offended and then becoming aggressive and then losing the fight, I've been able to calm myself down to the point that we've all agreed as professionals, me as a parent, they as professionals, and found a solution. You know, so that speaks volume to the fact that the children's services are not out to get us as a community. But here's what I want to say. We have a bulk of work to do as a community, as parents. We need, as Nigerians, as Africans, we need to learn new skills. We need to learn creative approach to discipline. Nobody is saying we want to let our children run around the streets. No. But this concept of, I was beaten, look how I became. I cannot tell you how many times people have used that phrase for me on social media. Tolu, you and I are friends on Facebook. When I've said, I remember putting a post and said, guys, we need to be careful with our boys. Boys are very sensitive. Let's not be misguided by their height and their muscles. Let's be nice to our boys. People attack me on that basis. I said, well, feel free, batter your children with electric pole for all you care. If that's the way you want to do it, carry on. So I feel like that's where we start. So that way, we don't get involved in the conspiracy theory of foster carers trying to cash in on us, or, you know, all of that stuff. We do the work from home, you know, and even in the case of bullying, as a parent, if you're alert, if your child is being bullied, you will be the first to notice, because they come home looking morose, looking depressed, you raise it. And very quickly, to round up, Tolu, you started by saying religion and culture. We need to also hone that. We need to put that in. I've been involved with families whose children nearly got taken away from them because somebody from Nigeria said they should fast for 40 days and 40 nights. And Tolu, even though he's 6'2" tall, he's 15 years old. He's a child, you know, and then you've made him fast. His energy level is low. The teacher picks up, they raise safeguarding issues. This poor family who have no mindset whatsoever to abuse their children, and all of a sudden being investigated for neglect. And I think this is what we need to do as a community. Creative approach into how we parent. And, you know, I thank all you professionals for this amazing work. So we take it further now. You know, we take it further. Instead of raising, you know, instead of being proactive, we nip it in the bud before it starts. When our Japa family come in, we anticipate that they're going to fall foul of the law. We anticipate it before they do it. It's not about them reporting first. We just assume that they're going to do it. And then we start to prepare them to not do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bolawan. That is well heard. And we will, do everything within our power to see how much we can address all of these issues that, everyone raised here, and also solutions and suggestions. The next person I'm seeing on my screen is Faith. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because of time, I'll go straight to my question. I wanted to ask Elizabeth and probably Rosetta as well. You both of them said a lot about all the support available for the foreigners that came to work, and unfortunately, long story short, the work is not there. They are struggling and they have families, children to feed. You're asking them to come. I've met some of them that don't really want to be known to these professionals because they're afraid of being sent back to their country. So Elizabeth, is there any sort of assurance available for these families that they won't be sent back home? Because when the Home Office picks up some things based on what they're saying, they know the condition of their coming was to work and pay tax, not to look for food bank and look for resources from public fund. So is there any assurance for them not to be sent back to their country when they are looking for support from services? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it depends on the context. Are you talking in the context of if, because obviously we're talking about children who come to the attention of social services who are about to be taken into care or already taken into care. But I would say in terms of if a parent is struggling to look after their child and they're not able to, and they carry on hiding it, at some point, they will get caught or something would happen, and then they would end up coming to the attention of social services. So as you're saying, there are two issues there. There's the immigration aspect. Obviously, if you're here and you came, you're supposed to work and you're not working, the end result, I'm afraid, is you potentially could be sent back home. But then there's the issue of if the child gets involved with social services, then the case has to run its course. And so the parent has to remain here to make sure that they get their child back, if that's what's going to eventually happen. So whilst they're here and they're fighting that, they have to remain here. They won't be thrown to Nigeria when their child is here. So they cannot be separated. So they have to wait to run the course of whatever is happening. So there are two issues there. So yeah, so I hope I've been able to, I mean, you feel free to give me a call, like outside of here so that we can discuss it further.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we don't have enough time.
Yeah. Elizabeth, do we have your details in the chat session? If not,
like you said, there was a problem with the chat, but I don't.
Yeah, okay, send it to me.
I'll see if I can put it in
and then
there.
I'll put it in for you.
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay, so Debola, can we quickly take your question? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adebola Toloye Edmonds, popularly called the Ball. I don't have a question, it's just a contribution. I want to say a big thank you to everyone. I listened to speaker after speaker, and it's thought-provoking. Linda, I want to congratulate you on the inaugural seminar, as it were, today. I've just been introduced to this association and I've just joined. I'm currently the president of Nigerian community in East London. I'm a seasoned broadcaster and I work at NHS, and I've been looking forward to having a thought-provoking session like this. And I hope this is the right step in the right direction. I'm looking forward to having a program that's, we'll put heads together to talk about health and wellness. So I will need you guys to come together so that we can influence the community at large. And you know that the saying goes that a healthy community is a wealthy community. So I hope that this discussion today, this is not going to be the end, because you can't exhaust it. It should be a continuous thing. And I want to thank you all for your contribution, and I want to say kudos, and let's keep it going. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adebola.
Tolu, can I just ask, do we have anyone else waiting apart from
No,
myself?
you're the last person. So I think you have a question. So you ask your question, you
So
round up the whole session and give your vote.
Gosh. Okay, hang on one moment. Sorry. Oh my gosh. I've done something to my, I know you can, okay. So yes, I'm here again. So I have got a question. So before I ask my question or say what I have to say, again, I want to commend everyone who's contributed, organized, stayed with us throughout the whole 2 hours. It's been very, very, very informative, and honestly, truly, myself and everyone else associated with our association, we look forward to working with you in the future. We are all about collaboration. Nobody knows everything, and we are all about, as I said, we're collaborating and doing what we can to support, empower, guide even our community, both here and actually in Nigeria. So I was just, if I can just very briefly add one thing. So I was listening to the two previous people who gave a question, and all I can say is that I've had experience in safeguarding child protection. As I said to you, my background is a nurse, and my background is A&E nursing. And as an adult A&E nurse, you can work in pediatric A&E, which I did time and time again. And I've actually been in situations where I've had to call the police and, call our safeguarding officer because there were real concerns about a child. Equally, on the flip side, I've been in a situation where my daughter, because she's very silly, one day we went to A&E, banged her head. 2 days later, went to A&E, banged her head. Right? There was before I knew it, before I could say what happened, I'd received a call from the school to say, what's happening with your daughter? I didn't even know that the two organizations were working together. But actually, as a nurse, I was actually heartened to know that they were working together. So all I'd like us to think about is, ultimately, who is paramount in this discussion? It's the child. It is the child. It's not even about nurture versus nature. It is to an extent, but it's ultimately about the child. So like I said, I've experienced, working in A&E, having to report, concerns about a child. And actually the A&E where I worked was, in Haringey. So I'm familiar with Victoria, Columbia and other things that have gone on. And I've also been, for want of a better word, it wasn't serious, reported because my daughter had attended A&E on 2 consecutive occasions because she just liked to jump off the bed. And being a nurse, I'm all about, head injuries and, making sure everyone's okay. So what I've taken from this, it's been a really interesting, informative, open, honest discussion. One of many that I hope we're going to do, moving forward. Please, what I would ask everyone, let's collaborate. People have got particular skills that Tolu, other people don't, have skills. Let's collaborate. Let's see what we can do to support our community. Anyone, what I would ask, because the comment box is not working, you've got our email address. Please, if you wouldn't mind, to send us an email letting us know who's attended. I am aware that some people have dropped off. If you've got any questions, we can seek to answer this. This session has been recorded, so we can potentially give that out to other people. And from the bottom of my heart, on what is left of Social Work Day, I would like to thank everyone for your amazing contribution, and in particular, our facilitator. She doesn't want me to say this, Tolu. Thank you so much, my dear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tolu.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right. I don't know if we still have Mr. Akinfe here. If you can just, say one word or two. We have a lot of work to do together. I think I'm still seeing Ebere's hand. Ebere, do you still have a question?
It's not a question, but I really want to thank every one of you. It has been amazing. I want to thank Deborah for inviting me. I would like to join this group because I'm part of the professionals. I'm a nurse.
Yeah.
I'm a physical health nurse and I'm a mental health nurse at the same time.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to having you because we need all hands on deck. We can't do it alone. We want everybody on board, join us. We have a lot to do. So, Mr. Kipe, you have the floor. 1 minute, please, so we can round up. Thank you.
All right. I'll be brief. I'll try and speak under your 1 minute. I'm sure a lot of you know me, but I'll just introduce myself just again. My name is Ayo Akipe, and I'm the chairman of the Central Association of Nigerians in the UK, KANUK. KANUK is the umbrella body of all Nigerian organizations in the UK. We have about 130 members at the moment. You are one of our members, a very, very, very important member. And I stood through these 2.5 hours today, listening to every word, because what you guys are doing here is very important to what we're doing in KANUK. There's 3 organizations I'm working with tirelessly at the moment. One is you, the Association of Nigerian Healthcare and Social Care Professionals. The other is the Association of Nigerian Housing Professionals, because the 2 of you are dealing with all the victims of the Japa syndrome, and you have to sort out their problems. The other organization I'm working with, who we've got a meeting planned for next week or the week after, is the Association of Nigerian Police Professionals in the UK. And this is all Nigerian police officers. And what are we working on? Knife crime. What we're trying to do is to set up knife bins. The pilot project is going to start in Sodok, because as you all know, the mayor of Sodok is a Nigerian, Michael Shitu. He has agreed to host us this time around. So we're going to put up knife bins and ask all our youths to hand in their knives. Please stop the stabbing. So, you look at all the issues: child care, child abuse, knife crime, destitution. These are all the social problems KANUK has to deal with. I deal with this on a day-to-day basis when you are not all harassing me about your passports. These other issues actually are much more important. They are more important than you wanted to renew your passport to go to Nigeria. But anyway, I said I'll stick to my 1 minute. So you are very important to us. Keep on doing what you're doing. I want to appreciate everybody who's come here, both the speakers and the guests. KANUK will always be behind you. We will always support you. And yes, we will keep you posted through your president, Linda, about all the other events we have coming up. And yes, we want you to attend and participate. So once more, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Linda, your hand is still up.
No, I think, gosh, I'm not IT literate. You can take it down, whatever you have to do.
Okay, I just want to be sure so that it doesn't feel like I'm ignoring you.
No, not at all.
I just want to say thank you so much, everyone. I know we did plan to run this for 2 hours. We are like 36 minutes over, but I think it's worth it because there's a lot to cover here, and this is just the beginning. And like I said, we need all hands on deck. So if you're in the care sector, health sector, kindly get in touch with me. I will drop my number now, so we can add you to the group. We want to work together with everyone. We want to work with the British government. We want to work with the Nigerian government because we are passionate about what we are doing here. So please spread the word. Share the link as well. I've shared the link in the chat. Share the link so that we can get more people to join us. And on this note, we're going to call it a day. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night. God bless you. Bye for now.
Bye,
Thank you, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Please,
you.
Ebere, I put my number on the chat. My number is on the chat, Ebere.
Okay.
Lady Ebere, thanks so much for
I've got you.
joining.
Thank you.
I've had a swell time. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, everyone. Bye.
Sorry, Elizabeth, are we able to refer people to you?
Of course.